Stay tuned to watch this video to see how I took this rough turned bowl that doesn't look round and made it into this bowl. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, as that will help grow my channel. If you'd like to subscribe, I'd appreciate that as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave those and I will respond. Again, thank you. This week's project is going to be something known as a banana bowl. People often ask me, Michael, can you turn things on the lathe that are not round? This does not appear to be round. When, in actual fact, it is. If I lay this circle template over it, you'll see that those outside pieces are round. And if you look down from up above, you can see that these pieces down here, the edges, are also round. So think of a bowl as it comes down like this. I'm hitting the top two pieces here, but the sides I'm not hitting till somewhere down halfway down the bowl. So in actual fact, this would have been a normal bowl with the side cut out and the side cut out. So yes, it is round, but the finished product is not going to appear that way. And that's why this is referred to as a banana bowl. This is also a twice turned bowl. This was roughed out back in September, and it had been fairly dry at that point anyways, and it was roughed out, and you can watch the video on that if you look in my video library. And then this was allowed to dry both in my kiln and just on the shelf. And it's dry now. It's less than 10% actually. The tenon is not too bad. It has gone a bit out around, but I'm going to try and use that as is. And we'll go ahead and mount this up and finish turning it. It's going to be a natural edge bowl, not a live edge bowl. The difference being the bark is already gone. But I'm going to leave this, which is a natural edge. But if you leave the bark on, then it's referred to as a live edge. So this will be a natural edge bowl. And I'm also going to see if I can leave this branch in it somewhat, just for interest's sake. Even though this bowl has a lot of missing wood, it's still fairly balanced. If you remember the banana shape, it had an equal side on the high sides and an equal side on the low side. So it's actually fairly balanced. And I was able to start turning at about 500 RPM and probably could have gone faster. Here I am cutting uphill. You saw a moment ago I was cutting downhill. That just refers to the direction of the cut. Typically, you'll get a better cut if you cut uphill. That means as I push the bowl gouge up the side of the bowl, the cut is being supported by the fibers that are above it. That will minimize the tear out. You can see here from the size of the chips that are coming off, it's cutting fairly well. Even though I'm getting a non-continuous surface as I get up near the rim, it's still, because of the speed, it's cutting fairly well. Here I'm just working the bottom, just trying to flatten it out, and also getting ready for what will be a small recess for a decorative part on the bottom of the bowl. There, that was in real time. I was only 2 or 3 minutes shaping the outside, and it's pretty good from here on up. I may just take a scraper. But I don't know if you notice there, but I mean from here all the way around to here, I'm turning nothing but air. So the secret there to do that is, as always, sharp tools. Just like in church, the answer, if anyone asks you a question, is Jesus. When wood turning, if you're ever having a problem, the answer is sharp tools. But the other thing that I can do here with this is turn it fast. Because what will happen is I'm holding this here. It'll come here and it'll bounce off and then come in here and hit. So what you want to do is turn it fast so it doesn't have a chance to bounce off of it. So right now I was 500 RPM. So I was able to get the speed up to 700 RPMs. That should be fast enough for what I'm trying to do at this point. So first I just work on the bottom a little bit. Again, I'm going to end up with a decorative recess here. And then I do the push cut coming up the side of the dish. So I've switched to the inside. There's not a lot to see when I turn that, but I'm getting pretty thin out here. And I'm also getting a bit of tear out, which is a bit of a concern because I'm going to have to smooth that out, which is going to make it even thinner. And I'm already pretty thin, so I don't want to go any thinner. But what I do, if I can turn that here, the wall gets a little thicker right here and here. So it's very hard to see that when it's turning. So what I do is I lay my tool up against where I want to pick it up and turn it on at that point and then just work from there on down. I don't want to come out any more out here at all because it's already as thin as I want that to be. So turn it here, get it ready so I know where I'm at. I can even make a little line on my tool rest there, that'll work well. And then I can bring my tool into that and then work from there on down. Two reasons I like using my carbide tool at this point is, one, it's difficult this close to the edge to get the bowl gouge and ride the bevel, so it's a bit easier using the carbide tool. The other is, generally speaking, the carbide tool does a better job at giving me a finished surface, especially when it's discontinuous. The carbide doesn't tend to bounce around as much as what the bowl gouge itself would. Once I get deeper down inside the bowl, so I'm not riding the up on the edge, I can switch to my bowl gouge. Now it's easier to ride the bevel, and it does a good job deeper in the bowl and running across the bottom. On the very flat part of the bottom, I do like to use my scraper. It gives me a good surface, and at this point I don't need to remove a lot of material. If you remember, I said I had tear out. Scraper does a good job at cleaning that up. You see here how fine that sawdust is. It's just very, very fine. And that does a great job at smoothing that surface. It's not aggressive, but it's gotten rid of almost all that tear out. Just a tiny bit left near the top. And it doesn't take away a lot of material, which is what I want at this point because I'm getting very thin. And this is what I want. I want this to be as thin as possible. Coming down the side, it's not good to remove too much material, but this does a good job at removing very little. The round nose scraper does a great job, especially at this transition point from the walls to the bottom of the bowl. I do apologize for my arm being in the way here, but one of the things you want to do when using the round nose scraper, keep the scraper perpendicular to the surface that you're trying to scrape. I decided that I wanted to remove a little more material from the bottom of the bowl. So here I'm just using my bowl gouge, starting at the middle and then just doing a pull cut coming across the bottom. There, I think I'm ready to sand, at least up here. I mean, I'm not down here, I've got a lot of work to do, but that's as thin as I want to go. I don't have any tear out, it looks good there. I may go over with a negative rake scraper, but the scraper seems to be doing the best job, especially on these wings. One of the things that's really difficult is sanding a bowl that's non-continuous like this. So what you'll see here is I actually tip the sanding disc up so that I'm hitting on the trailing edge. That way the piece as it turns into the sanding disc doesn't catch it and tend to tear it off. So I just, in this case, just sanding with the lower edge of the sanding disc. That's looking really good. Tiny bit of tear out right there, I'll get that. But up here near the top where it's thin, I'm in good shape. So a little bit more through here, and maybe I'll get that with a tool, and then I'll continue to work the inside. Whenever possible, I want to do as much scraping with the tool as opposed to sanding. It's a lot less work, but that scraper did a good job. I'll do a little bit more there and we should be in good shape. The negative rake scraper is doing a good job just removing any lines here on the outside of the bowl. And the other thing is, with a big heavy piece like this, with a big heavy tool like this, making good contact, I can ride all the way up to the bowl, right up to the very top of the rim. So I haven't shown a lot because it's hard to get inside here and not block my view on the camera. But that's pretty thin and pretty good surface. Like that's pretty well ready to sand. I may try and go a little thinner just down near the bottom here. Let me show you here how thin and uniform those walls are. So this distance here is the same as the thickness of the bowl. I'm uniform right down to there. I may be starting to creep out just a little bit there, but not much until I get right to the bottom. And then it's quite a bit thicker. But I need to be in the bottom because there's also a recess right at the very, very bottom. But it looks like I can take a little more, just a little more on the bottom. So I'll do that. I'm going to put a coat of sanding sealer on the whole thing and then sand it some more. But the outside is good. No tear out to speak of. And it's in good shape. I haven't sanded any on the inside yet, but the tear out is not bad, so I'll be able to sand pretty good. The other thing is, you'll notice I was able to save this branch. It's a neat little feature, so I'm happy about that. So I'm going to cut a little more on the bottom, and then we'll get to sanding. The good thing about one of these bowls is you can see the thickness of the wall. So you can see there, and then right about here it starts to get a bit thicker, and then it's pretty uniform, but a bit thicker all the way down through here. So I may take this down just a small amount to try and match this. And that's going to be a bit thinner because I've got a bit of tear out right here that I'm going to have to sand. Remember I said I was a little thick right at the bottom and also right at this transition point. So here I'm just using my bowl gouge. Again, working from the center out in a pull cut. Seems to work quite well. It's removing material and is giving me a fairly good surface. Now I don't know if you can see it, but right here, which is a hard spot, it transitions from a wall and it's a sharp transition. And I got a little tiny groove there. Now I can sand that. It would take a long time to sand. It's a difficult spot to sand. The preference always is over sanding to use the gouge, a scraper. Let me show you. Without turning, see that line right there? That's what I'm trying to get rid of. So with that, I want to use my scraper. In this case, I'm using a round nose, so I don't have any sharp edges. And I want to just do a very, very light pass. The goal is to get this kind of sawdust off and hopefully eliminate that without sanding. I don't know if I can get that on video without blocking. Let me move the camera. So as I mentioned, I'm going to use my scraper, and keep an eye on the right side of your screen, the right side of the bowl. You can't see what's under my hands on the left hand side, and I actually, when I'm turning, I can't see it either. So I always watch what's on the right hand side, and that's where I'm watching that line to make sure that it's disappeared. That's what I want. I'm barely touching it, and you can see I'm getting extremely fine dust off of there. I don't see the line anymore. That hard line is gone, so that's good news. That probably saved me a half an hour of sanding, and I was 30 seconds. I do have a couple lines right here. I'm going to try and do the same thing there. They're very fine, but I'm going to see what I can do. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Here, as you can see, there's very little contact coming around there, and it'll tend to bounce. These are getting thin, so they'll also move as they're rotating. So sometimes it's really hard to get a good scrape on those, and that may be sanding. Although it does look a little bit better, I'm going to try one more pass and see whether or not I can at least reduce the amount of sanding I have to do. One advantage of using the carbide round scraper is that I don't have to have my tool perpendicular to the work surface. Because the cutter itself is round, I can touch it with anywhere on that surface of the cutter, which makes it a little bit easier to work on the walls. At this point, I'm just using my round carbide scraper to remove any fine lines that I see in the bottom. Hopefully you can see that as I'm coming across the side, a reduction in any lines that you may have seen. There, I think that is done. Just a light sanding across all of it, and this bowl will be ready for finish. So I think you can see now why this bowl would be called a banana bowl, because of the shape of it, not because of what's inside. Here you can see a beautiful shot of how I managed to keep the branch on the side of the bowl. And here is a good view of the shape coming up the sides. And here you can see the thickness of the bowl. This turned out to be about 4 millimeters thick, one of the thinnest bowls that I've ever turned. Again, a close-up shot of the branch on the side of the bowl. And this is just a little test to see if she's watching. My daughter doesn't always watch all of my videos, but this bowl was for her. So I'll find out if she watches all of this video.